Oh, hey there. Come on in. We're just about to start. Welcome to My Wife the Dietitian, a fun weekly podcast about nutrition and healthy lifestyle. I'm Rob, and together with my wife Sandra, we invite you to join us on this informative and entertaining journey through the complex world of healthy eating.
Join us each week as we strive to help you with transforming your overall health and relationship with food through up-to-date, evidence-based nutrition information.
If you're like me, your knowledge of kidney stones comes from shows like this.
I got a stone. What stone? A kidney stone. What is that anyway? It's a stony mineral concretion formed abnormally in the kidney. And this jagged shard of calcium pushes its way through the ureter into the bladder. It's forced out through the urine. Oh, that's gotta hurt.
While this is a somewhat accurate representation of what kidney stones are like, there's definitely more to it. We are joined today by Melanie Betz, the kidney dietitian, and she's here to teach us everything we need to know about kidney stones. And believe me, there's a lot. Stay with us. Welcome to My Wife the Dietitian. Hello, Sandra.
Rob, hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
The sun is shining and it's warming up every day. We're finally into a spring that's getting to be closer to summer.
I know. Love it. It's like we can come out of hibernation finally.
Yeah. But we all have to drink more water. I'm constantly talking to the kids about, are you drinking enough water? And today's topic.
I was going to say, does that have anything to do with what we're talking about today?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, that's a number one prevention strategy, but we will be talking to Melanie Betz, the kidney dietitian, all about how to prevent kidney stones and what foods to include if you have kidney stones and how to prevent recurrence of kidney stones if you've had them in the past. Yeah,
it's a really good interview we did with Melanie, and I was educated, let's say. I didn't know a lot going in, but there's a lot of really interesting information and really good, solid stuff if that's something that you struggle with. So kidney stones, that is. So
they are solid little pebbles in your kidney.
Right? Exactly.
Just like, people say, oh my God, it's like so painful. I've given birth to kids, but having kidney stones was worse.
Yeah. So be sure to listen in and we will get to that soon.
Sounds good. Hi, we have Melanie Betz here with us today. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Sandra. I'm so excited to be here today.
Thanks for joining us today, Melanie. It's nice to hear from you.
Yes, I'm excited to be here and talk all about kidney stones, a topic I know and love.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Let us know, let the listeners know who you are and your background.
Yeah. So I am a registered dietitian and I specialize in kidney stone prevention. I spent many years at the University of Chicago in the section of nephrology, where I worked with people who had kidney disease and also kidney stones. And I just kind of honestly stumbled into this world of kidney stones. The University of Chicago has one of the most well-known kidney stone clinics. And so I was very fortunate to be able to learn a ton of information from the doctors there. And that is where I sort of realized, like, oh my goodness, there is so much to know about kidney stones. When I graduated from school, I feel like I barely knew that you had to drink more water. Like, I knew nothing. And so I was just fascinated with how important nutrition was and how little I knew and other dietitians knew about kidney stone prevention. And so that really just kind of motivated me to start the kidney dietitian, which became my full-time job when I had twins about a year ago.
Wow.
And so I've kind of just really dove into this. I have a website, thekidneydietitian.org, where you can, I have tons of information there about kidney stones. I've developed a course. I have a dietitian kidney stone training, and I've done speaking engagements. Like, I've really just kind of dove into this whole kidney stone prevention world. And so that is why I'm here today, to talk more about kidney stones.
That's
Absolutely.
Awesome.
No, that's amazing. And I get so many questions from clients and caregivers of residents in long-term care. So-and-so has a kidney stone. What diet should they have, and what should we do to help prevent further kidney stones? So I get the question all the time, and I've seen so many patients in the past, and I know what you mean. Like there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's not a lot of credible, reliable information. So I'm so glad that we're talking to you today for your guidance with this. So yeah, let's ask some questions, Rob.
Yeah, let's get into it. Let's just maybe start with the basics and like what are kidney stones? How do they form? Is that kind of a good place to start?
The real basics, sure.
Yeah, because I know nothing. I'm like you were like whatever it was a few years ago there when you were starting to get into it. So
yeah. So kidney stones are basically crystallizations of different compounds that are in your urine, right? That's what forms a stone. And so they form because of many, many different reasons. There's endless reasons why someone might form a stone. But what it comes down to is that your urine becomes too saturated with these different molecules. So by far the most common type of kidney stone is calcium oxalate. About 80-ish% of kidney stones are made of calcium and oxalate. So basically what's happening is there is way too many calcium and oxalate molecules kind of floating around in your urine, because all of us have some calcium and some oxalate in our urine.
Right.
But basically the problem comes when there is way too much of these things, or they're way too concentrated. And that's when you are way more likely to form a kidney stone. We could get more into the weeds, and there's different things that we want a lot of in your urine. The most common one we talk about is citrate. So when you don't have enough of these good things in your urine, it makes calcium and oxalate or whatever other molecules more likely to bind. Less likely to bind. So you want more citrate. It makes it harder for calcium and oxalate to bind. But that's kind of like kidney stones 102, if you will. Kidney stones 101 is like basically your urine is just too concentrated with different molecules.
Now, are there certain people who are more susceptible to getting kidney stones, or is it something we could all get depending on, what we're eating, I guess, or, lifestyle factors or whatever?
Or not drinking enough fluid.
Right. So really everyone could get a stone, and they're really very common. So I think this is fascinating / maybe scary to learn about. So 10% of people will have a symptomatic stone. So like you'll pass a stone, or you'll have pain from it, or something like that. But which is a lot, right? Like 10% of the population is huge.
Yeah. And don't they say that sorry to interrupt. Don't they say that it's more painful than giving birth is passing a kidney stone for some people?
A lot of people say yes. And someone who gave birth about a year ago, that's definitely not something that I want to experience. Yes. So it's a big deal. And I think, it's a kind of unfortunate, because I think kidney stones are almost like a joke, like in sitcoms and stuff. It's like, oh, it's just a kidney stone. That sucks. But like, no, it's a really big deal, because not only do they hurt a ton, but then you think about the sort of emotional mental health implications of living with this truly chronic disease. Once you have a stone, there is a 50% chance that you're going to have another one at some point in your life. So for most people, this is not just a one and done thing. And a lot of people have lots of stones. So you basically are putting yourself in this, or you find yourself in this position where, you are just sort of constantly afraid of passing another stone and having that very painful experience and missing out on life events. A lot of people talk about like, I had to miss this wedding or vacation or my kid's birthday, or, because stones pop up whenever, right? They're not necessarily on our schedule. So from a mental health standpoint, I think that's something that's really important to remember, is that it's not just this, like this guy got a kidney stone. Like, no, that really sucks.
Yeah.
And also from a more medical standpoint, a stone is usually like a side effect of other diseases going on. Like we think about stones as a metabolic problem. So there's some like other stuff going on. Like people who are at stones are at greater risk of bone disease. That's a really big thing. Hypertension, chronic kidney disease, like all of these different things. So it shouldn't be something that we think, oh, fine, you had a history of kidney stone, no big deal. It's a sign of lots of other things going on.
Crazy.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So Can people that have the chronic, like recurring kidney stones, would they eventually develop chronic kidney disease?
So not guaranteed, certainly
No.
not. But there is data to show that people who have stones are at greater risk of disease, of CKD, of kidney disease. Some doctors even argue that even just by having a kidney stone, you could, in theory, be diagnosed with CKD stage 1. I think from my understanding, not everyone agrees with that, but there definitely are some doctors that would say that's the case. And I think the CKD, typically, from my understanding, comes from basically that sort of recurrent damage to the kidney. So, maybe they're getting infected, or you have to have multiple surgeries to have them removed. So, eventually all of that injury to the kidney can impact kidney function.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh, this is so interesting. This is really good information, because I think, like you said, kidney stones are kind of seen as, oh, well, whatever, it's just a kidney stone. It's like, doesn't sound like that serious, but as you said, it's a metabolic disease. Like it's a symptom of other things going on in the body. So this is super important. And so I guess with the prevention, like preventing kidney stones, I guess, is it the same to prevent kidney stones the first time as it is for recurring kidney stones?
Yes, basically, yes. So whenever we talk about kidney stone prevention, it is really, really important to know that we have to get something called a 24-hour urine test, because this urine test is really going to tell us what's going on in that urine chemistry. And whatever's off in that urine chemistry is obviously going to sort of direct our preventative efforts. Unfortunately, only about 20% of people who have kidney stones get this 24-hour urine test, despite the official recommendations from the American Urological Association's recommendation that anyone with more than one stone or, quote, interested parties get this test. I have to imagine that basically anyone who's passed a stone is interested in prevention. So I would argue they're basically recommending that everyone with a kidney stone get a 24-hour urine test. But for whatever reason, and this is a whole nother episode, I could talk a long time about this, but for whatever reason, urologists are just not ordering this test. And so preventative efforts have unfortunately just become more general. And so oftentimes you'll hear like, throw some lemon juice in your water, or here's a oxalate food list printed from 1973, and like follow this, and like that's so not what it should be about.
From 1973. That's awesome. It's been photocopied about 1 million times.
Yes. You can barely read it. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, totally. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's so it's just people have to pay for it. Is that why they aren't, like, is that one reason that doctors aren't ordering, or is it they just don't realize? Or
I don't know. I'm sure, like many things, it's multifaceted, but I think that so it is often covered by insurance. So I don't think that payment is a huge barrier for a lot of people. I think there's this sort of perception in the field that it's so burdensome to do this 24-hour urine test. Like, oh, you have to collect your pee for a day and put it in a jug and send it in. Like, yeah, like, it's not the most fun thing in the world, but I bet a kidney stone is worse.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, like I've done them, and it's really not that hard. It's kind of fun, actually. It's like, oh, how much do I actually pee in a day?
It's like a science experiment. That's awesome.
And so I think it's partially that. And I think, honestly, another big part of it is that urologists, from my understanding, urology training and fellowships don't really cover prevention very well. Urologists are very, very good at getting stones out. That's what they're trained to do surgeries and all sorts of procedures, which are certainly very important to remove kidney stones. But I think a lot of them truly don't know and are not educated on how to utilize this 24-hour urine test for prevention. And so I think they just don't do it.
Oh,
sounds about right.
Yeah. Wow. So people out there can look at your website and look at all the ways to prevent, as you just mentioned. So that's the next question. How do you prevent kidney stones?
Yeah. So in a perfect world, we get that 24-hour urine test. And I actually have a tip sheet if anyone is listening to this and really wants to get this test now that I've advocated for it so much. I have a tip sheet to ask your doctor for this test, kind of some talking points and, things to help you go into that conversation a little bit more confident, because I know it can be kind of overwhelming to go to your doctor and be like, hey, doctor, like I want this test. So I have that on my website under my resources tab if that's something you're interested in. But ideally, you get that test, and then that test will basically tell you what your urine risk factors are. Some of the most common risk factors, or the most common urine risk factor is having high urine calcium. So that is actually the number one driver of stones. The most common risk factor that I see and that we see in the literature is people who have too much calcium in their urine. And there are lots of things that I, as a dietitian, can do to help lower calcium in your urine, and also things that your doctor can do too. There's different medications and stuff, because certainly nutrition is important, but medications are important too. Sometimes food changes are just not enough. So medication is certainly very helpful in certain circumstances.
Right.
So you could maybe have too much calcium in your urine. You could maybe have too much oxalate in your urine. You could maybe have urine pH that is out of range. A low urine pH makes calcium oxalate and uric acid stones more likely to form, whereas a pH that is too high actually makes calcium phosphate stones more likely to form. So you really don't want either extreme. You want your pH to be in the right range. That urine citrate could be too low. That's that thing that we want a lot of in our urine, because that prevents stone formation in most cases. You could have too much uric acid in your urine, right? There's all these different things. And then there's different nutrition strategies that you take to really target what's off in your urine basically for effective kidney stone prevention.
Oh, that's awesome.
It sounds like there's different types of stones then that are forming depending on what you're getting too much of. Is that how it works?
Yes. So there are 5 sort of main types of kidney stones.
Wow.
So those calcium oxalate ones I mentioned earlier, by far the most common, like 80% of stones are calcium oxalate. But you also have calcium phosphate stones. And uric acid stones. Those are the next 2 that are most common. Uric acid stones are actually very much, or you're at higher risk of uric acid stones specifically with diabetes. So that's something to mention, since so many of us are struggling with diabetes. That's good to know. And then the last 2 are very rare. So there's something called cystine stones, which is almost exclusively related to a genetic disorder called cystinuria. And then also struvite stones, which are nearly exclusively related to chronic urinary tract infections.
Those ones sound like something you'd see in the cave, when you're going caving and you see all those stalagmites and stuff.
That's so true. Yeah, actually, that's probably why they're named, actually. I should probably know that. But the struvite stones actually look a little bit more like that. Like they're long. They have these long, like finger-looking things. So they sort of look like that, too.
Oh, that would I can see why it would hurt passing that with all those edges.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. So when you mentioned that if someone's got a high urine or calcium in their urine, and that you give them strategies to help reduce their calcium in their urine, I would love to hear those.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing that we can do to lower urine calcium is to make sure that you're not eating too much salt. Which unfortunately most of us are, as we know. So basically the way that your kidney handles salt is for every molecule essentially of salt that your kidney gets rid of, and all of the salt that you eat eventually gets nearly all of the salt that you eat eventually gets excreted in your urine, assuming you're in a steady state and not super sick and those types of things. So when you eat a ton of salt, you have to pee it out. And the more salt you have to pee out, the more calcium has to go with it, because that's just how your kidney does that. So the most effective nutrition change that we have to reducing urine calcium is to make sure that you're not eating too much sodium. So the recommendation for people with high urine calcium is 2,300 milligrams, which is actually the exact same amount all of us should probably be eating anyway. This is not a very low sodium diet necessarily, but we know that at least in the United States, the average intake of sodium is somewhere around 3,500 milligrams of sodium. So most of us are getting a whole heck of a lot more than we should be.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Wow, yeah.
Okay. That's surprising. I didn't realize that was like number one strategy is kind of reduce the intake of salt if you don't want kidney stones. And it's not just,
Yes.
as we talk about in our other episodes, it's not just the salt we shake on our food. It's the ultra processed foods, the Mr. Noodles, the ramen noodles, like all those things that are like
Salad
just,
dressing. Yep.
yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
salad dressing, what are
That's-
like, do you have like a top 5 of like the ultra processed foods that have salt, like the salty 6 maybe is a good one?
I don't
Salty
know. I would
six.
just be making that up. But I I feel like the one that comes up most often, like time and time again, is lunch meat, specifically turkey. Because I feel like, I'm going to get a turkey sandwich. That's a healthy choice. And like, sure, turkey's probably going to be lower in fat if that's something that's concerning to you. But that lunch meat is just a killer when it comes to sodium. So that comes up a ton. And the other thing that's really surprising is actually bread. I don't, even I as a dietitian don't think of bread as salty necessarily, but we tend to eat so much bread.
Yes.
And it does have a surprising amount of sodium, like one slice of bread, maybe like 140-ish, 160-ish milligrams of sodium. So that adds up, especially when we think about how much sodium is coming from all the foods that we eat. Around 80%, fun fact, of the salt that we eat tends to be in the food already, is in that bread or the lunch meat or whatever.
The canned soup or the snacks like pretzels and peanuts.
Yes, right, exactly. And so when someone says that, if I had $1 for every time someone said like, oh, I don't eat any salt, I don't add salt to my food, it's like, okay, but you have, pickles and spaghetti sauce and, you actually are getting a lot of salt. So it's really, really important to read those food labels if you venture down this road of trying to reduce how much salt you're eating.
Yeah, perfect. It's good to be aware of that stuff, especially with, like you said, people who don't think they're consuming a lot of salt because they're not shaking it on their food. It's good to be aware that, you need to read the labels of the things you are eating just to see what you're putting in your body, especially if you have issues that are related to that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, all of us really should be eating a lot less salt than we are probably, but it's just especially important for certain people and certain diseases, kidney stones being one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. Okay, I have another question just from that theme of to reduce the urine calcium. What are some other dietary strategies? Like you said, adding more citrus?
So citrate, yeah. So citrate is a confusing thing. And so often, I feel like you've probably heard that advice to eat or to drink lemon juice for kidney stones. And that's true if you have low citrate in your urine. So citrate, again, is that thing that makes kidney stones harder to form. So we want a lot of citrate in our urine. And lemon juice does have a lot of citrate in it. However, in order to really move the needle in terms of how much citrate is in your urine, you have to have a lot of lemon juice, somewhere around 1/4 to 1/2 cup of lemon juice a day to actually get enough citrate to make a difference. So
wow.
It's
I can't imagine. Yeah.
So that advice to put a lemon wedge in your water, that's wonderful if that helps you drink more water. That's the number one thing we can do to prevent stones anyway. But that lemon juice is probably not really going to make a difference. Really, the most effective way to make sure that you, or to increase how much citrate is in your urine is actually to make sure that you're eating enough fruits and vegetables in general of any type, and that you're not eating too much animal protein. Do you want me to dive into the science of that? Because this gets real,
please.
It's almost a little bit traumatic. It's going to make you go back to high school chemistry. But
That's okay.
So citrate is a base. It's a very strong base or alkali. And all fruits and vegetables, when we eat them, they are metabolized during metabolism of fruits and vegetables. It produces base. The metabolism of animal protein, non-dairy animal protein specifically. So we're talking beef, chicken, fish, seafood, pork, right? Any sort of non-dairy animal protein, meat, right?
Yeah.
That is metabolized to produce acid. So when and the citrate that we want to be in our urine is the strong base or alkali. And so when you are eating a diet that is producing a lot of acid, which most of us are, because most of us are not eating enough fruits and vegetables, and we're eating a lot more meat and protein than we really need, we're making all of this acid, and our body is going to hold on to that citrate to sort of help neutralize minimize that acid load from the diet. But if we lower how much acid we're eating, that our body's like, cool, we don't need to hold on to the citrate because we don't have all this acid. So then it's more likely to put that citrate in our urine, which is great for stone prevention. So really the best way to increase urine citrate, ironically, is not necessarily to focus on these citrus fruits that have a lot of citrate in them or have more citrate in them, because the citrate itself isn't really what we're after. We're actually just after this like general alkali load that we can get from fruits and vegetables. So again, really the best way is just to make sure you're eating your fruits and vegetables and that you're not eating very large amounts of non-dairy animal protein.
That's a great explanation.
Yeah. That's why I've had patients that have been on like a quote unquote dirty keto diet and developed kidney stones. Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah. Keto diets are very, very well known to cause kidney stones. In fact, it's pretty common practice for children who need a ketogenic diet for epilepsy, right? Which is what the keto diet is supposed to be about.
Right.
They sort of prophylactically put them on potassium citrate, which is just a medication form of the citrate and alkali that we're talking about, because it's such a common complication of a true ketogenic diet in these kids. And I've definitely seen it many times in my course and during my time at University of Chicago, people who gave themselves stones from following a keto diet or just a low carb diet. It doesn't necessarily even have to be a true keto diet, just a low carb diet.
Interesting.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's so interesting that I love that you knew that connection with the seizure, like the anti-seizure diet, how keto started. Like that's the original evidence for keto diet was in kids. And that's interesting. So they actually do a prophylactic potassium citrate supplement to help prevent kidney stones in these kids.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, crazy.
Oh my God. That's so, wow. This has been like super informative. And I'm wondering.
I'm so glad. We feel like we're barely scraping the surface. There's so much to know.
Oh, they're totally, I know.
It's 101, right? We got to just absorb this first.
Yeah. Like, actually, that's what I wanted to ask is kind of like the main take-home message for people that to prevent kidney stones, like either prevent them from ever occurring or preventing from recurrence of kidney stones. What would be your top 3 main tips of advice?
I would say make sure you're drinking enough water. Boring advice, I know, but it really is the most effective thing you can do to prevent stones. All this other stuff we're talking about is great, but if you're not drinking enough and your urine is concentrated, you're going to be more likely to form stones. So drink enough water. Technically, for people who have formed stones, the recommendation is to drink enough to produce 2.5 liters of fluid per day, which is a lot. So assuming that we lose some water from things like breathing and existing, right? I recommend for most people to drink around 3 liters of fluid a day, which is about 100 ounces, which is a lot. I believe that the average consumption is more like 1.5 liters, so about half of what we recommend for stone formers.
Yeah, I was going to say about...
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say about half sounds about right. You know, like six cups of water a day is probably what a lot of people are doing. And it's hard to do the 8 to 10 or 12, I guess, is what you're saying if it's 100 ounces. So it's
a
tough.
lot. It's a lot. And the recommendation for stones is a lot higher than what someone who hasn't had stones needs to do.
Right.
But again, it really is, it's free. It's, not easy, but it's, and it's just effective. It's the most effective thing we can do because obviously the more water you drink, the less concentrated your urine is going to be of all this stuff that we're talking about. So
it's an obvious.
Yep. So that's my number one.
And that's good for like bile health too. Like, so you don't get bile sludge and gallstones and, there's just for drinking water, extra water, and just keep yourself hydrated is so key for prevention of so many things.
It sounds so simple, but why don't we do it? It's hard, myself included.
I know. I think, well, part of it, like I just yesterday was telling one of the clients that I was seeing that, when I guess around age 60, you start to lose your thirst receptors. So you don't actually feel thirsty. So when you start feeling thirsty, you're probably mildly dehydrated. And a good way to tell is just, monitoring your own urine. If it's dark and concentrated, odorous, then you're probably a little bit dehydrated and you really got to bump up your fluid intake because you don't want kidney stones.
No, you really don't.
No.
You really don't. I also feel like, and this is just very subjective, I feel like it makes you feel better. I historically am not a great water drinker, and I feel like it just makes you feel sleepy and sort of lethargic. It helps you a little bit be more on your game. Coffee is good too, but water helps.
I totally agree with that. Like even
sure.
like when the kids, they're like, oh, I got a headache. I'm like, have you had much water today? Because I feel like that's something that happens too, is you get, kind of dehydrated. You feel kind of like, I don't know. Yeah. Like you said, it makes you feel better when you're hydrated.
Yeah. And constipation, which we're dietitians and we're here, we have to talk about poop a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And, the preventing of constipation, which is so, so common, is a huge benefit of drinking water too.
For sure.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. There's just, we can't even talk about that enough. It's just, yeah, for sure. Okay. What's in second top?
Okay. So my second thing would be sodium, which we already touched on. So I don't think we need to dive into that again. And my third one is actually to make sure that you're eating enough calcium, which we have not talked at all about, and probably sounds very counterintuitive to everything that I just said.
I was going to say that, isn't that kind of, you can explain that?
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics. So even though this high urine calcium is, like I said, the biggest driver of stones, calcium oxalate stones are the most common. So calcium and oxalate love to bind. That's why they form kidney stones. And we know from many studies that people who eat dietary patterns that have enough calcium in them have a much lower risk of stones, around 50% lower risk of stones.
Interesting.
And the reason for this is because when you eat enough calcium, that calcium binds oxalate in the foods that you're eating, because any healthy dietary pattern is going to have oxalate in it, because oxalate exists in all fruits and vegetables and whole grains. And if you're eating a healthy diet, it's going to have oxalate. So when you eat enough calcium, it massively reduces the amount of oxalate that's absorbed in your intestines that eventually has to get excreted in your urine, increasing the risk of stones. And so adequate dietary calcium, very ironically, I know, is actually associated with a reduced risk of stones because of that link with oxalate digestion. Basically.
Right.
I love that you said dietary calcium.
I heard that too, Sandra. I was just going to mention that. We just did an episode on, what was it? Was it calcium? It was calcium supplements. And it was the supplements, you know this, right? Supplements are more prone to giving you stones, I guess, versus dietary form of calcium.
Correct.
Is that,
okay. And the reason comes back to that urine calcium. So natural calcium, like in milk, does probably increase your urine calcium a little bit, not going to lie, but nowhere near the amount that calcium supplements do. And so we see the higher risk of stones with calcium supplements, but a much lower risk with dietary calcium. So basically that little bit of extra calcium is totally worth it because of the massive reduction that you'll see in urine oxalate when you're getting in enough calcium.
Interesting, hey?
Yeah, and it's so tricky because there's so many people at risk for osteoporosis. So it's that balancing message again, right? Like it's like you don't want to take high dose supplements of calcium because then you might end up with kidney stones, but you also don't want to not eat anything that like you need to have your 1,000 milligrams of calcium a day in your diet, or 1,200 milligrams, and like 3 or 4 servings of calcium rich food and fluid a day to get your calcium requirements to help your bone health and keep your bones and teeth and everything strong. But as you're saying, if you have too much calcium supplements, then that affects the risk of kidney stones.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we're so quick to, we're just such in a pro supplement phase of our world. I don't know what it is, but it's like, it's like, oh, well, calcium's good for XYZ, so we got to take it in a supplement. People ask me so often, oh, well, what should I take for immunity? What should I take for stones? What should I take for XYZ? And it's like, well,
eat your food.
Eat some vegetables. Like, it's almost like we forget that there's nutrients in food. Like, that's the point of food. Food is good. It's almost like food has been demonized because of, the endless things that are quote bad in food. And so we've just like switched to be like, oh, we need to get everything in pills. And that just doesn't make any sense.
Totally.
And it's not reflected in the research,
It sounds like, when the Jetsons, I don't know, Rob said this in an earlier episode, how he gets his image of like the Jetsons family sitting down for their breakfast, and it's all just like pills on a plate.
Yeah,
that's their all their meals. That's right. They don't have to eat food anymore.
Right. And like celery, that's the only thing that's safe, You're
right.
That's what people think. Not true, but yeah.
Not true. And there's so much like food gives so much pleasure, so it's just
yes. It should. Yes.
Well, speaking of that,
can I just ask a quick question?
Of course.
Is this, when you have kidney stones, is that something that you will now have forever? Or is it just like, I've got them and then I can cure them by making some changes and then I'm good to go? Is that kind of how it is? Or
I mean, I wish I could say that if you did everything I told you perfectly, you would never have a stone again. But this is life, and that's not how it works. So there are so many things. So poor diet, it certainly contributes to stones, but there are many types of stones that are not diet related, or nutrition basically can't change things enough to reduce your risk of stones. I think it's important for everyone to understand how nutrition can impact whatever your urine risk factors are. So then what you can do and what to maybe pay attention to not, 5 years from now, start binging on pickles or whatever it is.
Right.
But once you have a stone, like I said, you're at a 50% chance of having one again. So, and the way that you treat stones is very different. Some people, if stones are small and they're not obstructing anything in your kidney, doctors just leave them in there, and that's okay. Like a lot of times that stone might be in there for the rest of your life and it never causes problems, or maybe it could move. So, I think once you have a stone, even just one, it's something that you should be cognizant of probably for the rest of your life.
Yeah, good to know. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sandra's going to ask you about, what were we going to ask, Sandra?
Well, I was just going to ask the question that we ask all our guests at the end.
Oh, that question, right?
Yeah, because we were talking about food gives you pleasure, and it's, it's more than just fuel and vitamins and minerals. If you're going to a family potluck, what dish would you bring?
So I think I would most likely be bringing a potato salad that has been part of my life forever. It's very easy. So just potatoes and a Miracle Whip. It must be Miracle Whip with
Love it.
hard-boiled eggs and onion and salt and pepper. So that's it. But of course, you have to put together in a certain way. And I can't give you all of the secrets of this recipe, but that I make that potato salad a couple times every summer. It is a recipe that our very close family friend's mom, so basically my second mom, made all the time growing up. And when I eat it, it just brings me back to childhood and swimming in the lake and family and friends. And it's my absolute favorite.
Awesome. Hey, what do you think about dill pickles in a potato salad?
Oh, I actually love dill pickles, but you can't mess with my potato salad recipe. So
not your salad, but just in general. What if I brought a potato salad that had pickles in it? Would you be like, that looks good, or would you be like, what, pickles?
I would try it for sure. I'm a little afraid the pickles would overwhelm all of the other flavors.
Ooh,
well, you just have to add the right amount.
The
reason I'm asking, it's kind of a joke between Sandra and I brought this salad to a friend's dinner one night, and I grew up, it was a macaroni salad, I think, but they're kind of the same sort of thing, right? And I'd put pickles in it because that's what my mom used to do, and I liked pickles.
It was potato salad, Rob.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yes.
And Sandra's like, oh, Rob made the salad, so she just kind of left it hanging there. And I'm like, what does that mean? She says, there's pickles in it. And it was kind of a joke. And she gave me a hard time about it, but I didn't see the problem with it. I thought it was totally normal.
It was delicious.
Did other people like it?
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, it is good. But you don't want too many pickles, but it's like adding bacon bits in a Caesar salad. You get that little hint of flavor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah. Something to think
If we're
about.
ever at a picnic together, I'm looking forward to this potato salad with pickles in it.
With pickles, there you go.
That's funny. Oh, that was great. Wow, what a great interview. Thank you so much for connecting with us today and sharing your wisdom. This has just been so comprehensive, and I think this will help a lot of people.
Good. I'm so glad. Thank you for having me.
Do you want to just give a quick shout out too for where people can find you?
Of course. So definitely check out my website if you are interested in what I was talking about today. I have tons of information there, which is thekidneydietitian.org. I'm also on Instagram at thekidneydietitian with periods in between each of those words.
Okay.
I'm also on Facebook. And if you're listening to this and you are someone who is living with kidney stones and you want to work more with me, I have a course, which is Kidney Stone Nutrition School, that really helps you dive into those 24-hour urine test results, helps you identify what's off, and walks you through exactly what you can do to prevent stones based on them. And I also just released, and I'm so excited, I've been working on this for so long. I just released a dietitian kidney stone training.
Oh, cool.
Which I'm so excited again, because there's really no resources out there for dietitians to learn all this stuff. So
That's awesome.
that's also available now. So you can check both of those things you can get to from my website, which is thekidneydietitian.org.
Perfect. And we'll put all those links in the show notes so people can definitely track you down.
Awesome.
That's
Right on.
wonderful. Well, thank you so much for connecting today. And this is going to be great. Thanks so much, Melanie.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
so
a lot
much for having me. It was fun.
Thanks for joining us, Melanie.
Wow, what a lot of information that was.
Yeah, Melanie seems to be, let's say, an expert on kidney stones. She knew her stuff for sure.
Yeah, she's helped thousands of clients with kidney stones.
Yeah, I can imagine. No, that's good. It's good to have that kind of a resource out there for people, and especially that it's available online. You can tap into Melanie's wealth of knowledge through her various portals online, her social media, and her website.
Yeah, and then she's got courses and webinars and free information and paid resources for people that want to learn more about how to prevent kidney stones.
Yeah, that's awesome. Right on. Well, what do we have coming up next week?
Oh, I'm so excited. We are speaking with Margot Fedorak, who's an author of Cooking Tips for Desperate Fishwives. I love that title.
That's a great title.
And it's a memoir, an island memoir and cookbook. And so we had a really good interview with Margot all about her recipes and her life and her book, which I noticed on BC Ferries in the gift shop and had to, I just started reading it and it hooked me right away. So I think it'll be a really good episode to listen to next week's.
Yeah, there's some really interesting recipes that she talks about, like stinging nettle
Pesto.
I'm like, okay, I gotta look into this. That's just one of many. So it's a really, like Sandra said, a really interesting interview, and she's got some really neat ideas, food wise, and just fun person to listen to. So
yeah, self-taught chef, just living and raising her two daughters on her own, pretty much. She has a lot of creativity in the kitchen.
Yeah, for sure. So be sure to check that out. That's next Monday. We'll be doing that.
And it kind of links with our more recent episode last week on family meals and importance of eating together.
Yeah, she talks a lot about, cooking with her family and just how it's an event.
And how her daughters are actually now better cooks than she ever was. And they're in their 20s.
Yeah. So some really fun tips. So to be sure to check that out. And you have some courses you wanted to talk about too. Hey, Sandy?
Yeah, that's right. On the show notes, we'll have a link to the Dietitian Central course for dietitians, a course for RDs. There's the Nutrition and Dementia Implications for Dietitians in Long-Term Care. That's one course that's coming up May 18th. And there's another one called Oncology Nutrition, and that's all to do with helping people through cancer treatment and what are some of the red flags in terms of nutrition to look for. And so there's those two courses are available through Dietitian Central, and they're fairly inexpensive for the information that you get. And that Dietitian Central actually is a portal for a ton of great courses for dietitians all over the world.
That sounds amazing. And you're going to be doing some courses that are geared more towards just regular people that aren't dietitians. Is that right? Like coming up in the future, you're going to be doing some stuff like that.
Yeah, in the future, definitely.
Yeah. So we'll keep you posted on that once that starts to happen. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, and check out the blog. There's new articles coming up all the time, and a lot of the articles are written
by the guests that we have.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is
awesome.
Great. You can sort of tap into their thoughts again and see what we discussed on the podcast. And don't forget to check out social media. We've always got some new fun things happening on there. And if you have questions or comments, you can email us at mywifetherd@gmail.com. And sorry, Sandra, do you want us to say something?
Yeah, let us know if you've had experience with kidney stones, what you did to help yourself or your husband or your kids or your family members, if anyone had kidney stones. I know when I was helping clients in the community, that was a recurring referral from doctors is kidney stones, help with kidney stones. So it's very common, and it's better to prevent them rather than treat and then having the incident of recurrence happen over and over again in your life.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, don't forget to rate and review the show as well. We always appreciate that. And like we said, check out next week's episode, and our midweek mini episode, Nutrition Nuggets, will be coming out on Wednesday. So be sure to tune in for that as well. And in the meantime, enjoy the sunshine if it's shining down on you. Hopefully it is. And we will talk to you all again soon. Thanks for joining us today on My Wife the Dietitian. If you like what you heard, don't be shy. Leave us a comment or review, and be sure to share our podcast with your friends. If you'd like to hear more, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media pages for updates, episode trailers, and other odds and ends. For more info and links on what we discussed on today's episode, check the show notes. We'll be back next week with another informative and fun-filled episode.